We're going to explore the vertebrae a little bit and talk about how some of them look like animals, and hopefully the analogy will help you remember the different parts and pieces that stick off of them. As we look at the vertebral column, there's going to be a repeating pattern throughout, and we're going to classify them based on the ones that look similar and based on their location. So all of the ones up in the neck are going to be your cervical vertebrae. Cervical vertebrae you can identify because they actually have extra holes here. So the transverse processes are the ones that are sticking off the side. And you see that no matter which type of vertebrae you're looking at, you have parts that stick off the side. With the transverse process of a cervical vertebrae, you end up with extra holes. And if you remember, the holes in a bone are there for blood supply and nerves. So why you have extra holes here is because the cervical vertebrae are up in the neck and they provide extra blood supply to and from the brain. The vertebral artery will go up to provide backup supply to your skull, well, your brain within the skull. And so that's why we have the extra holes here. So that's why you identify a cervical vertebrae. With the cervical vertebrae, there are two that look very different, and that's specifically for what we call C1 and C2. C1 is the one that will look flat. It will be the one that holds up your skull, so that's why it's wider. It's got a wider base for articulating with the occipital condyles. C2 actually has its body that's enlarged and has a part that sticks out the top, which is called the dens. This is going to be for our axis of rotation. So they'll sit just like this. And so the condyles of the occipital bone allow us to nod our head up and down. Here, this provides a pivot point for us to turn and say no, so we can twist side to side. So what we have here is the atlas, which holds up the world. So if you're familiar with Greek mythology, so Atlas is the one that has the world on his shoulders, and so that's the broader one. And then axis, I think of as this being the axis of rotation. So this is what we're going to twist on. With our cervical vertebrae, that's going to be up in the neck. Then we would go thoracic vertebrae. A thoracic vertebrae is identified by the fact that it looks like a giraffe. So we have our giraffe here. The transverse processes are going to be the ear sticking off. You have the antenna or the antler sticking out. Those are what we call superior articular processes because they're reaching up off of the top of this individual vertebrae. There will be one from above it that will reach down and touch here. So we have the superior articulating facets are the flat spot on the processes, where another vertebrae will come and rub, so you can slide them a little bit to get the motions that you do out of the vertebral column. So the nose of our giraffe here would be the spinous process, then the cheeks would be the lamella. If you look at it from the side, you kind of get that same idea. They have a nose that's long and points down, which is very different than what we see in our lumbar. The lumbar one, that spinous process points more straight back versus pointing down. It looks very bulky. The processes, the superior articular process, instead of pointing straight back like we saw in their thoracic, they curve in. So that's how you tell the difference with this one. And it's got these long hanging inferior processes, kind of look like big old hangy jaws. And then we have these antler looking things. So this one actually looks more like a moose. So if you're looking to identify, thoracic looks like a giraffe, and then lumbar looks more like a moose. Now, with the lumbar vertebrae, it is bulkier because it's going to take the weight. So the body also is pretty heavy and durable. So body is going to be the part that's going to be the bulk. And you have the body on all of these. And then you have pedicles here. I think of like little pedestals. This is what holds all of those processes on. The hole that's created is the vertebral foramen, which is where the spinal cord will pass through. Now, as you're comparing all three types of vertebrae, we have ways to identify the three. So cervical having the extra holes, lumbar looking like a moose, and thoracic looking like a giraffe. But how do you remember how many you have of each? Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Breakfast is typically served around 7, lunch around noon, dinner at 5. So there's 7 of these, 12 of these, 5 of these. All right, everyone, thanks for watching.